Welcome to Life Partner by Casey Lee. This is The Dating Files, a series that takes real relationship dynamics and examines them with honesty and care. These scenarios are drawn for educational and reflection purposes. Details may be composite or anonymous to protect the individuals involved. She had been on enough dates to know what emotional unavailability looked like. She knew the signs, the deflection, the surface level conversation, the way some men could sit across from you for an hour and never once ask something that required them to actually show up. She'd experienced that enough that she'd stopped expecting depth in early dating and started being quietly grateful when it appeared. So when she met Daniel, she noticed. He asked real questions. He followed up on things she'd mentioned in passing. When she said something vulnerable, careful, and measured, he didn't pivot away from it or fill the space with a joke. He stayed with it. He reflected it back. And when he shared about his own life, there was something present in how he did it. Not performing, not curated, just there. She told herself not to read too much into it. She'd been in this space before. The early stretch where everything felt like evidence of something. But this felt different in a specific way. Not more intense, but more settled. More like a conversation between two people who were both actually in the room. So they kept meeting. The conversations deepened. He remembered details, and he initiated. When she was honest with him about something that had ended before, something she didn't usually share this early, he didn't minimize it or move past it quickly. He held it with her for a moment. And then he said something that surprised her. "I appreciate you telling me that. I don't take it lightly." She started to let herself feel something. Not hope exactly. She learned to be careful with hope. Something closer to openness. A willingness to see where this might go without already cataloging reasons why it wouldn't work out. And then about 6 weeks in, he said something that she did not expect. He wasn't sure that he was ready. Not for her specifically. Not because of anything that she'd done. He said it with a kind of quiet honesty that she recognized as the same quality she'd been responding to from the very beginning. He told her that his last relationship had ended more recently than he'd initially let himself acknowledge, and that somewhere in their conversation, he realized that he was still carrying it. Not in the way that made him want to go back to her, but in the way that made him uncertain he had enough space to give this what it deserved. So she didn't argue with him. She didn't ask if they could slow down, keep things casual, or see what happens. She just sat with it. Then later, alone, she tried to locate what she was feeling, and what she found wasn't simple. There was disappointment, real and specific. There was something that felt almost like grief for a version of this she'd started to sketch in her mind without fully meaning to. And underneath both of those, something she had to look at more carefully. The particular sting of this not being about her and how strange it was that that didn't make it any easier. She had expected, or she realized, that emotional availability would mean readiness. That a man who could feel and communicate and be present would naturally also be in a position to build something with her. She hadn't thought about the fact that those two things could exist in completely separate places, that someone could be emotionally fluent and still not be emotionally available for a relationship, for the specific kind of sustained intentional presence that commitment requires. She thought about the men she dated before Daniel. Some of them hadn't been emotionally available in either sense. Others had been ready in the logistical sense, open to a relationship in that window of life, but they hadn't had the depth or the presence that she needed. Daniel was something she hadn't quite encountered. A man who had the depth, but wasn't in the window of being ready for a relationship. She had to decide what to do with that. She thought about waiting. It was a thought that she examined honestly, but then set down. Not because he wasn't worth it, but because she recognized the logic. If he just had more time, if she just stayed patient, if she made herself available at the moment. It was the same kind of reasoning that had kept her in other situations past their natural ending. The waiting wasn't the problem, it was the self-suspension. She didn't leave this situation in bitterness. She didn't revise her read of him or decide that his honesty had been a kind of manipulation. She just let it be what it was, a genuinely good connection that arrived at the wrong time. And she let herself feel the weight of that honestly, which was that she found the only thing that actually helped her move forward. What stayed with her and what she later came to think of as the real gift of this experience was the recalibration it gave her. She had been, without fully knowing it, confusing emotional openness with relationship readiness. She had been reading depth as availability and presence as intention. And while those qualities were still exactly what she wanted, they were still the right things to look for. She now understood that they were a foundation and not a guarantee. A man could be all those things and still not be ready to build on them. That wasn't a reason to become guarded or to lower her standards or to stop valuing what she had valued. It was simply a more honest map of what she was navigating. And with a more honest map, she can move more clearly. What this episode points to is one of the quieter and more disorienting things that can happen in dating, which is finding someone who has the qualities you're looking for and discovering that qualities and readiness aren't always the same things. If you're sitting with something from this episode, I want to invite you to two places. The first is the free workshop. This is where I work through the difference between what someone shows you about who they are and what that actually tells you about what they're capable of giving right now. It's a distinction that quietly changes how you read early dating, and I'd love to have you there. If you want to go deeper into the members only podcast, into what it means emotionally to experience this kind of connection and why it's so specific and how it feels and how it lands, that continuation is waiting for you there. You can learn more in the show notes. This conversation is complete as it is. I'm really glad you're here. Stay steady and aligned with the relationship that you want.